Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. Canada's bombshell accusation.
Credible allegations of a potential link between agents of the government of India and the killing of a Canadian citizen.
And the wave of reaction.
It's very unfortunate that it took the death of Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
What it means for BC's Sikh community and beyond. Plus, tackling soaring food costs.
We're hoping for a productive meeting. Thank you.
Canada's Big Five grocery chains ordered to work on stabilizing pricing. And no playbook to bring back football.
The athletics department at Simon Fraser is a mess right now.
A look inside why SFU's football team was suddenly shut down.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening, I'm Lien Yeung. Thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with the shocking allegation from Canada's highest office. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau saying security officials have credible evidence that the government of India may have been involved in the killing of a BC citizen. Hardeep Singh Nijjar was shot to death outside a Sikh Gurdwara in Surrey back in June.
Any involvement of a foreign government in the killing of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil is an unacceptable violation of our sovereignty. It is contrary to the fundamental rules by which free, open, and democratic societies conduct themselves. As you would expect, we've been working closely and coordinating with our allies on this very serious matter.
45-year-old Nijjar was an activist campaigning for an independent Sikh homeland. He was shot by two gunmen as he sat in his truck in the Gurdwara parking lot. His death sparked outrage in the Sikh community and triggered a number of protests around the world. The allegations against the Indian government are reverberating across Canada, but especially in Surrey, where the shooting took place back in June and where Hardeep Singh Nijjar called home. Lindsay Duncombe shows us how people there are reacting.
The people who worshipped with Hardeep Singh Nijjar had been shouting accusations India was responsible for his death for months now. The Prime Minister's announcement didn't spark celebration here.
Until we actually see people behind bars, until we see actually people that were, supplying, money for this hit, carrying this out, I think it's kind of like skepticism right now that as if something's actually going to happen.
Canada knew that this was all happening and didn't intervene as per their fiduciary duty. It takes our leader to be killed for a morsel of acknowledgement.
The man India labeled a terrorist was known at his Gurdwara as an activist, leading the fight for a free Sikh state. Nijjar's death, the latest violent chapter in the long-standing and divisive fight for Khalistan, a fight this former BC Premier says Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has picked a side in.
There's a perception that Mr. Trudeau has been politically in bed with the Khalistani elements for his own political reasons. Not the violent elements, but the separatist elements.
And there was praise for the Prime Minister.
Finally, somebody that stand with Sikhs, right? And we appreciate the way what he did, right? What he said, right?
Current Premier David Eby says he was deeply disturbed and angered, adding Canadians across the country must be safe from the interference of foreign governments, including being targeted for threats or physical harm, including murder. These activists say Nijjar's death sparked fear.
It was just a deep scarring moment, I think, for the Sikh community in Canada, and also for the generation of activists that's still coming, that the reality of what we're speaking out about may lead to our death even in this country.
Sikh separatists say Canada's move today will intensify, give energy to their global fight, one that is expected to continue with rallies and town halls here in British Columbia later this month. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Surrey.
And our Tanya Fletcher joins me now live from the Guru Nanak Sikh Gurdwara, in Surrey, where Nijjar was once the president. So, Tanya, you've been in Surrey since shortly right after the Prime Minister's announcement. Can you set the scene for us?
Leanne, it has been largely peaceful here. No mass gatherings up to this point. We've been here pretty much all day speaking with people as they've been going into and coming out of the temple. I want to just take a step back, though, so you can see more clearly what's going on behind me. You can see the Khalistan flags. Those blue and yellow flags are still surrounding the property. And take a look at that billboard. This is perhaps very telling that this is still up. You can see the red words assassination. Under that, you can see 3 photos. Those are officials with India's High Commission in Ottawa, and under that it says wanted. So that is the scene as we see behind us with the Gurdwara. And, you know, I've been chatting with people all day, and while most have a definite response, a reaction, and opinion to today's developments, many are still hesitant to talk publicly about it. We spoke with a few who are willing to perhaps give their voice in an audio form but didn't want to appear on camera. And they say that goes back to their fear over their own safety. They say that there have been threats to many people given that what happened up to Nijar's killing, and they say that in and of itself isn't going to go away. They say this isn't an isolated case and that this has been happening in countries around the world, and that just because Trudeau has today stood up and said this publicly, while that is a significant development, they say it is not going to end things in that sense with the way it's been going.
Yeah, Tanya, those fears are certainly understandable. However, all of this, of course, still has to go through the judicial system. And so in the short term, though, what are people calling for there?
Yeah, so we did hear, as we heard in Lindsay's piece, from a more official capacity, the BC Gurdwara Council. And, you know, they were saying they're skeptical. Their opening line to asking for their reaction was about whether that this will do anything at all. They're skeptical. They say that, you know, is this really going to do anything? They talked about their fears, as I mentioned before, and I'd call it tempered praise, perhaps not even praise going that far. They said that this has been a long time coming, that the Prime Minister in Canada should have done this long ago, given what the federal government knew, or so they say. And so they say that they're skeptical that today's developments will really change anything.
There's a reluctance for people to actually trust these processes, because if India is colluding like in Canada with actors that they have set out here, there's always been a question as to like how much information did Canadian intelligence have when Hardeep was being warned a year in advance that your life was at risk, but nothing was done to actually protect him.
So I asked him specifically what kind of concrete steps they would like to see, what kind of specific action. He said, above all, a public inquiry. They've been calling for that before, but they say now that the Prime Minister has come out and said this, that they see no reason why a public inquiry couldn't be done. And they also say, as you heard in the clip from Lindsay's piece there, they want to see people behind bars. They want to see names of perhaps a money trail as to who was ordered to do this hit on Nijar, according to them, allegedly. And so that's kind of where the scene is at today, certainly in stark contrast to where we saw it 3 months ago after Nijar was killed. It was exactly 3 months to the day, by the way. He was gunned down June 18th. Today is September 18th. So 3 months have passed, and while there was a lot of tension and fear and frustrations in the days that followed and the weeks and months, today is much more tempered, you might say. A lot of people relieved, a lot of people surprised, and a lot of people waiting and watching to see where this goes from here. Lien.
Yeah, for sure, Tanya. I'm sure people are still trying to process this, bombshell accusation. Really appreciate you bringing us that perspective. Tanya Fletcher reporting live for us in Surrey tonight. And to help us understand this story even better, I had a chance to speak with Shinder Purewal earlier today. He's the author of Sikh Ethno-Nationalism and a professor of political science at Kwantlen Polytechnic University. Shinder, what was your reaction to hearing this accusation by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau against the Indian government and its involvement in the death of Hardeep Singh Nijjar?
It's quite shocking coming from our Prime Minister, because it's such a poster. It's like people for you and me in private talking about these things. In public, when the Chief Executive Officer of Canada says this, it's very serious. If you have credible evidence, the first thing to do is to give it to the investigating agencies. They will take it to the Crown Corporation. Crown lawyers will decide whether to take this to court. And court delivers the justice. They will see whether this evidence is credible or not. So, and we also expelled one of the senior diplomat of India that was revealed by our foreign minister.
Right, and how significant is that?
Well, it's diplomatic relations are based on reciprocity. So whatever we do, India will likely do the same. So you have a start of a new diplomatic war. We expel their diplomat, they will expel ours. It's a tale of two different countries. The US is getting closer to India. They're becoming their strategic partners. And we have started a new Cold War.
Wow, that's really something to think about. Where does this put the future of Canada's diplomatic ties with India then?
At this moment, we are at the very low edge. It couldn't be worse because 2010, we started comprehensive trade talks with an objective that one day we will have free trade. Now, right now, the talks are stopped 2 weeks back. Our trade minister has canceled the trip for next month. And now this is quite shocking.
As you know, we have a very large Sikh community here in BC. Do you think they should be scared or worried after hearing this news?
Well, not really. I mean, it's one case of killing. We still don't know, despite Prime Minister's statements, we still have this no conclusion that he was killed by whom. RCMP is still doing the investigation. The next stage is the Crown lawyers will decide whether it's going to the court. And the judge will decide who is guilty and who is not guilty.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you, Shinder, for speaking with us today. That's Shinder Purewal, a political science professor at Kwantlen Polytechnic University. After years of debate and public consultation, Laneway homes are coming to Burnaby, and homeowners can start applying to build one starting today. As Michelle Gomez reports, it's welcome news for many residents.
When we realized that we'd have the opportunity to put the Laneway house here, we've just kept this clear so that we're ready to go when we get approved.
This Burnaby property belongs to Aunt Leah's foundation. It houses vulnerable mothers who are at risk of losing their children to foster care. The group has been waiting for city approval to add a Laneway home.
The need is there and it's so important, but being able to add potentially room for 3 families to this particular development is really great.
The new home will have space for up to 3 moms and their children.
They love that they can come here for unconditional support, everything from bonding with their babies to life skills to education.
Makiko Ara also plans to build a Laneway home on her Burnaby property.
It is exciting that the city is sort of opening this up. I mean, if I look, if you drive down any laneway in Vancouver, you see all these cute little houses and, there's families that are living in there. So I think it's going to change the dynamic of the city in Burnaby, and I think it'll be a positive thing.
Once her Laneway house is built, the lot will be able to house up to 10 people. Experts say this gentle densification is much needed in Burnaby, which has half the population density of Vancouver. Burnaby's approval of Laneway homes comes 14 years after Vancouver made the shift.
I think roles of policies when it comes to laneway homes and basement suites or secondary suites have a consistency throughout the region, and that it isn't just a ragtag policy.
Yan says some Burnaby residents had concerns about parking, densification, and firefighting access, and he says laneway homes just weren't a priority for previous governments.
This does and will open a certain stock of rental housing, particularly for families, ones that don't necessarily fit in a studio or 1 bedroom in a tower.
In a statement, the Ministry of Housing says it's planning to make secondary suites, including laneway homes, legal this fall throughout the province. Michelle Gomez, CBC News, Vancouver.
Changes are coming to the province's drug decriminalization pilot project. And the annual meeting of the Union of BC Municipalities was told that could happen as soon as this fall. The possession of small amounts of illicit drugs was decriminalized in January, and Dr. Bonnie Henry says the province is starting to look at amendments to those regulations.
With any new initiative, there's a period of adjustment, and that's where we're in right now. We're listening to communities, we're hearing what the issues are that are coming up out of this, and we're going to make adjustments.
Municipalities were told drug use could be restricted in more places, and that comes as a ban on drug possession near playgrounds comes into effect today. The convention also heard criticism that more supports are needed from the province to cope with public drug use in smaller towns. And 5 months after Simon Fraser University announced it was shutting down its varsity football team, a special advisor's report into that decision says money was a major factor. But that's not what officials told players at the time. Our Dan Burrett joins me now live with more. So, Dan, this decision has been hugely controversial. We've been covering it for months. Remind us what happened.
Lien, in April, players and alumni were stunned, to say the least, when SFU President Joy Johnson announced the long-running football team was being axed, citing, quote, ongoing uncertainty after an NCAA division the team played in was dropping the squad next year. That sparked outrage among players, alumni, and supporters. At the time, the university's senior athletics director, Teresa Hansen, told the players that decision was not financially motivated and called the process to join another conference very complex. Today, though, the independent report says the department overseeing SFU varsity sports has major money problems, a $1.7 million deficit if the team played this year. It says there's no clear path for SFU football to start playing again in Canada or the U.S. At best, it could try to rejoin the Canada West Conference, but would need some exemptions. At least one former player says he was hoping for more clarity on why they shut his team down.
We were told quite simply that money was not an issue or a reason for any of this happening. And the report makes it pretty clear that money was definitely an issue already. Even if it wasn't the reason for football canceling, it has definitely been a struggle for the department as a whole. It's hard to say that they necessarily lied to us, but I definitely feel lied to.
Players did seek a court injunction to reinstate the team earlier this year. That was denied. Several high-profile alumni, including BC Lions great Louis Pasaglia, have demanded their names be taken off the university's Sports Hall of Fame. And a pledge drive led by BC Lions owner Amar Doman raised almost $800,000 to help save the program. As for what's next, the report says there are difficulties in moving to another league, specifically Canada West Conference. The head of Football Canada says it's a straightforward decision based on economics, the structure they have in place now, and competition, saying SFU would do well where they are competitively.
They have a region that they can recruit from. So they have the region of the Fraser Valley, of the suburbs in Vancouver, and then into other reaches in BC, where kids, quite frankly, in some cases, would not be looking at a UBC. So there is an area there that they can serve, and there's a conference and a competition that they can play in.
For its part, SFU officials say they need time to digest the report. A spokesperson told CBC they would not explain why they told players money wasn't an issue when the report says it was. Lien.
All right, thanks for Dan. Sounds like more to come. Dan Burrett reporting live for us tonight. Vancouver Island MLA Adam Walker has been removed from the NDP caucus due to a human resources complaint, but the province says it is not a criminal matter.
This was not a sexual harassment complaint against Mr. Walker. There are no allegations, to the best of my knowledge at all, that he was involved in anything criminal. This is an internal human resources complaint that was brought forward by an employee.
The unspecified complaint was raised in July, and an internal investigation found misconduct on Walker's part. While he's hopeful that the issue will be resolved, he says rejoining the NDP is not a decision he can make.
I'm hoping that through arbitration my name can be cleared, and beyond that it'll be up to Premier Eby whether he would like to see me back in caucus or not. I was elected by the people of my community, and they put me there to get things done, and I'm going to keep doing that.
Walker has represented the Parksville-Qualicum riding for the past 3 years and will now sit as an independent in the legislature. Over 400 active fires are still burning across the province, and dozens of properties are now under evacuation orders after recent gusty winds. In Peachland, the Glen Lake wildfire continues to quickly grow in size. Evacuation orders were issued for 8 recreational properties. And on the Sunshine Coast, there's a local state of emergency because of the Clohune Lake wildfire. 10 properties northeast of Seashelt near the top of Salmon Inlet are under an evacuation order. 28 properties are on evacuation order in the Horn Lake area in the Caribou Regional District, and the nearby Hell Raving Creek blaze has grown to 114 square kilometers. Spending time in nature can improve your mental health, and something that researchers say is founded in science. And now UBC has created a new tool to help identify the best green spaces in Vancouver. But as Yasmin Ranea reports, not all green spaces in the city are created equal.
Dunbar, Southlands, Kerrisdale, and I would say Westbourne Grey as well.
UBC researchers have mapped out green spaces across Vancouver and found there are better spots that support mental well-being in the west side of the city compared to the east.
The problem with this unequal distribution is that not everyone is benefiting from restorative nature.
Research suggests nature offers serious mental health benefits and reduces stress.
A fresh air, the peace of mind, it's just so nice and beautiful.
I just like the quiet and the stillness. Connecting to what is around me a little bit, and just getting away from all the noise and everything else going on.
UBC researchers have found some green spaces are better for mental health and well-being than others, based on qualities like the diversity of trees and green canopy coverage, which are associated with positive feelings and an easing of stress. They say Camosun Bog is a good example.
The sense of refuge, you see the close canopy, the density of trees. They give you the sensation that you are protected, you're safe.
Neighborhoods in the west, such as Shaughnessy and West Point Grey, ranked the highest based on the criteria, while Strathcona was among the lowest and considered vulnerable.
The way we calculated vulnerability included income, but not only. It also included housing stability, so if people would rent a house or own a house, employment rate, financial stability.
Experts in nature and well-being say the findings could help city planners identify inequities.
The issue with green spaces and how they're distributed in cities is that often people with lower health status live closer to areas that don't have as much green space. So as much nature as we can cram into spaces, the better.
They hope people of different incomes, backgrounds, and ages can have equal access to green spaces so that they can all benefit from what nature has to offer. Yasmin Ranea, CBC News, Vancouver.
And Darius Madavi joins us now. Darius, beautiful weather to be outside, hey?
Yes, well, for now at least. Tomorrow it's looking a little bit less so, but some good news for the greenery around the city because we've got cool temperatures today that are sticking around until tomorrow, pretty much across the province, but definitely here on the south coast, temperatures seasonal or just below. And if we look at our rainfall, we're finally going to get some potentially making its way all the way down here to Vancouver because we know the North Island has been getting quite a bit lately, but by tomorrow afternoon, the next system that moves through should bring some rain all the way down here, not just to the Lower Mainland, but right here in the city. And at times that rain should be heavy, meaning a pretty good amount of inputs to the ground. Finally, maybe we'll actually see it soak in and get the ground properly wet instead of just running right off. And that rain will continue until the evening before it sort of tapers off into Wednesday. And then we've got a few more sunny and dry days ahead, but we'll talk about that later. If we just take a look at how much rain we're going to get over the next 36 hours or so, it's a pretty good amount. So for parts of Vancouver, as much as 20 millimeters of rain, potentially more. So we could get some pretty good inputs pretty much across the south coast. And we'll take a look later this hour at across the province, but it's a pretty similar story. So for tonight, enjoy the bit of sunshine and dry weather we have, because as we get into tomorrow, small chance of showers overnight, maybe for the North Shore in the morning, but unlikely. It's likely noon and just after that we'll start to see that rainfall, get some moisture for the plants.
As my toddler likes to say, that the trees are going to get a nice drink of water.
Nice drink of water.
Yes, exactly. All right, thanks, Darius.
Thanks, Leanne.
A Surrey family farm gave away thousands of free spuds over the weekend. The event, labeled Ugly Potato Day, aims to take a bite out of food insecurity and reduce food waste by giving pounds of visually unappealing vegetables to the community. As Yasmin Gandam reports, the event has grown significantly as more people try to tackle rising inflation.
here like that.
Right on. Oh, it's like
yeah, maybe like a duck.
Potatoes like this one up for grabs for free at the Ugly Potato Day, bringing in over 5,000 people. Tyler Heppel of Heppel's Farm says although the event is fun for the whole family, to him it's important as a farmer to eliminate waste.
People are really hurting right now with the prices of everything and having to decide if they can really feed their family 3 meals a day. And at the same time, we do this to show people that it doesn't matter what a vegetable looks like, it can still be nutritious and delicious.
The farm has partnered with the Greater Vancouver Food Bank for the event. Proceeds from merchandise like t-shirts and hats go towards the organization.
Try and make sure that that excess food gets out to people in need. And there's a huge amount of food out there, and it's not waste food. And I want to try and make sure we don't say waste food. This is perfectly good, nutritious food. It's just excess food now.
This is the 11th time Heppel's has put on Ugly Potato Day, but it's been the largest turnout so far.
We're Irish roots, so lots of potato.
People say with rapid inflation, it's becoming increasingly difficult to put food on the table.
Who can say no? You know, it's an amazing opportunity to prevent food that should be eaten from going to sort of animal feed or worse, the landfills.
The prices of everything is like crazy, so any chance that we can save a couple dollars, we'll take that opportunity.
Avery, why are you here today? All right. Free produce, and also there's so much here, like I doubt it'll be gone by the end of the day, so I just wonder what happens to it after that.
Heppel says excess produce often gets sold for cow feed. He hopes this event inspires other initiatives to reduce food waste.
And we hope to snowball this into something where all farmers can put out their ugly produce and help feed that their communities.
And it's not just potatoes. Ugly carrots, squash, and even pumpkins, all for the taking. Yasmin Gandham, CBC News, Surrey.
As food prices rise, more and more Canadians struggle to afford buying their groceries. What the federal government is doing to address this, and what one BC grocery store has to say about the bigger picture, coming up. And thanks for joining our commercial-free live stream. Over the weekend, dozens of BC migrants and their supporters joined protests in cities across Canada to renew calls for improved rights and protections for migrant workers and undocumented people. Saurabh Sandhu spoke with demonstrators marching through downtown Vancouver, demanding immediate change.
The call for change is growing louder. Waishan Kwa is a spokesperson for Migrant Students United at SFU. He says in 2021, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau promised a new regularization program for undocumented people, migrant students, workers, and refugees. 2 years later, advocates say no program has been implemented.
A lot of us here are, international students, migrant workers, farm workers, care workers, and we're all in this immigration system together.
Advocates say because of their temporary immigration status, thousands of migrants in Canada suffer from poverty and exploitation, living here amid constant fear of detention and deportation, unsafe living and working conditions, and a lack of access to adequate health care.
Being here without immigration status means not being able to access health care, means not being able to access education, it means not being able to access employment standards, and it means living in fear of detention and deportation every day.
The renewed call for change comes one day before Parliament is set to reconvene. For demonstrators, it's a time to remind the Prime Minister to follow through on his promise and make migrant issues a priority.
Tomorrow they're going back to the cabinet and then they're going to talk about this. We want them to talk about migrant workers' status for all now.
The countrywide demonstrations come after Canada's temporary foreign worker program was labelled a breeding ground for contemporary forms of slavery by a United Nations official earlier this month. According to advocates, there are currently about 1.7 million people in Canada who are on temporary permits.
Agriculture production, industrial production, transportation, all the logistic industry, taxis, Uber, all these, they are worked mostly by migrants, even healthcare workers.
Advocates say they have waited long enough. It's time for government to act swiftly and implement permanent change.
No more programs, no more pilots. We want status for all immediately.
Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, Vancouver.
The cost of living keeps rising, and top of mind is the price of food. On that front today, the industry minister met with the heads of Canada's biggest grocery chains, and as Ashley Burke tells us, it was a difficult but much-needed conversation.
Will you lower food prices? What do you think?
You have a plan right now?
It's an image the government wants the public to see.
Will you lower food prices? Will you lower food prices?
The CEOs of Canada's 5 biggest grocery chains called to an urgent meeting in Ottawa.
We're hoping for a productive meeting. Thank you. How do you feel about being here?
After sinking to new lows in the polls, the Liberals are trying to win back support.
Our government is going to do everything in our power to make sure prices stabilize.
To do that, the Prime Minister told Front-Burner's Jamie Poisson he wants CEOs to deliver a plan.
Do you want them to tell you that they're going to bring grocery prices down, or do you want them to just stabilize prices?
I think stabilizing is the first good thing, but seeing prices come down would be even better.
How did the meeting go?
Very productive meeting.
When CEOs emerged from the almost 2-hour meeting, some dodged the cameras.
The Prime Minister said the prices need to come down, will they?
Others defended themselves.
Profit margins are not going up, they're going down on the food side, so we're not profiting from inflation.
Everyone in there wants the same thing, which is for Canadians to have better food pricing and for that to cool down, and it will.
The industry minister who met with them says he's leaving with a commitment.
Bottom line is that they agreed to work with the government to stabilize food prices in Canada.
Right now, the food inflation rate is not manageable for Canadians at 8%. It's just too high.
The opposition says this is just political theater.
I'm concerned that they're just talking again. And it's been 20 months since the cost of food inflation, has outpaced general inflation.
Their response to all this is to hold a big photo op today. The Prime Minister claims food will be affordable by Thanksgiving. So will, by Thanksgiving, lettuce be back down from its 94% increase because of today's meeting.
Now, that was a story from Ashley Burke out of Ottawa. For some BC reaction to this, we've reached Craig Caven, who's the Director of Operations for the Country Grocer chain. They're based in the Victoria area. So nice to have you on, Craig.
Thank you for having me.
So, Craig, you've had to raise prices in your stores. What would you say to those who believe that food inflation is partially driven by greed?
It's unfortunate that we've gotten to this point, but we have been dealing with this quite a lot lately as well as those like the big five. I can assure you it's not greed from our end. The operating margins are the exact same as they were over the past couple of years, and we just continue to operate as we always have.
And, you know, it's easy for us consumers to say that we need lower prices, but what's the bigger picture for you? What kind of challenges do you face as a smaller chain trying to deal with maintaining supply?
Supply is a big issue. Obviously, we're lower down on the totem pole than those other big suppliers, but it's something that we've always had to deal with. It's just the new reality that we're in these days, is that we are going to have to figure out a way together how to manage these prices that we're giving to the general public. That comes from manufacturers, suppliers, all types of producers. It's going to fall to everyone to play their part in this.
And where are you seeing the greatest rises in your costs from your end of things?
Being where we are and what we deal with, transportation costs are huge. The cost of goods going into the food is huge, such as wheat and oils. That's a big cause for inflation on all these prices. Weather is a big factor as well. There can be droughts in California. There can be droughts here in BC. There's wildfires. There's so many factors that go into it.
And so we're hearing the federal government threaten to introduce measures that could curb food inflation. You heard him say they're looking at stabilizing costs. The opposition NDP also considering tabling their own private member's bill that they say will be more effective. How closely are you watching this situation?
Definitely keeping an eye on it, right? Things at the top always trickle down. Being a bit of a smaller operator, we just rely on what comes from up top. So any change that's led by the government and dealing with the 5 major chains is definitely going to affect all of us down the line. Us independents don't necessarily have the resources or the financial backing or stability that some of these companies have to deal with some of these issues that arise. So everybody's definitely keeping a close eye on it.
And so, where are some of the factors that you get to play with when, costs go up, they come down, or you see regulations coming into play? Do you have factors that you can play with on your end to try and maintain your margins, as you say, which have pretty much stayed the same for you?
Yeah, there's a few things that we can do. Keeping local is definitely a big thing, a big part of what we like to do. We're definitely more flexible in our buying. We're buying for 11 locations that we have, not hundreds as say some of the big guys have. So what we buy can often be in smaller bunches, price controlled a little better, and then therefore we can offer different pricing. Hopefully a little more aggressive pricing on some things that give people deals and give some type of relief.
Yes, absolutely. I'm sure everyone's very appreciative of any deals they can get. Thanks for talking with us today. Craig Caven is the Director of Operations for the Country Grocer chain. Animal shelters across BC are facing a growing crisis. Many are full to capacity, and for the first time ever, some are considering euthanasia to make space for more rescues. The problem has been fueled by post-pandemic lifestyle patterns paired with inflation and the affordability crunch. And over the weekend, a fundraiser was held in Vancouver to try to help ease the burden. Our Janella Hamilton stopped by.
Make sure your dog is hydrated.
Susan Patterson has been rescuing animals for 15 years. She says within that time, she's never seen so many dogs in need of forever homes. And city-owned shelters and pounds are struggling to keep up with demand.
In 2014, I think in all 7 animal shelters here in British Columbia, I think they had 4 dogs under 35 pounds between all 7 shelters, and now all of those shelters are full.
Patterson believes the influx of animals being surrendered and strays being found on the street or tied up in parks is largely due to the pandemic and the growing affordability crisis in BC.
People didn't anticipate that they wouldn't have the time for the dogs that they had the time for during COVID. The housing problem is a huge issue. People can't afford the apartments they were living in that were dog friendly. Now they have to move to places that are not dog friendly.
Patterson, along with dozens of other animal rescuers and their supporters, put paws to pavement Saturday to raise awareness and money. Dogs of all breeds and ages coming out to support the cause, taking much-needed water breaks along the 4-kilometer walk. For some, it was a chance to enjoy scenic Spanish banks. Social media influencer and animal rescuer Lee Asher was also on hand for puppy cuddles and photos with fans.
When you adopt a dog, you save a life, but more importantly, you're able to give an animal an opportunity to truly be themselves, to be able to be free and not live in fear or in a cage.
The rising cost of living not only impacting animals here. 2-year-old Eduardo was rescued from a high-kill shelter in Los Angeles.
I just got back from LA and it is horrible there. 300 people a day are leaving the state, and a lot of them are leaving their animals behind.
Patterson hopes events like this encourage more people to consider adopting rather than buying from a breeder.
Try to find dogs that have been left behind and have nowhere to go.
Giving animals like these a second chance at life. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
A day to remember for many women's hockey players. The first pro draft for a new league. Who got picked and where they're playing? That's next.
No, that's not me. That's Stan Orchard, a government herpetologist who is on the firing line in what seems to be a losing battle against the invasion of the dreaded American bullies. They're giant frogs, who, rumor has it, were dropped here a few years ago by a disgruntled frog farmer who went broke. Stan's trying to catch one for us.
There's one scoop. You'd expect 99% mortality in the tadpole stage. That's why they produce so many tens of thousands of eggs. But here, there's tremendous survivorship, so the numbers of adults are going to increase rapidly.
And because so many survive, they will dominate the other species in the area. This guy could grow up to be 60 centimeters in length. Trying to find the big ones is tough. You have to kind of sneak up on them.
You'll hear some loud splashes as we walk down to the edge of the lake. They'll jump in, and it's an alarm system for the other frogs.
There's a few here, but they don't want to cooperate.
Why didn't we find any today? It was sunspots. I'm not sure. Today we went out and looked for them during the day. I was out here last night, and at night it's the best time to go out and searching for them. They're very wary.
Don't despair. I promised myself at the beginning of this item to show you a big frog. And here it is. This monster is from South Africa and weighs about 8 pounds. His owner was trying to enter him in a California frog jumping contest. The frogs we're looking for will be about half this size. According to Stan Orchard, the population explosion when the American bullies hatch could be tremendous. All these people, like the ones in the movie Jaws, just don't know what's coming. But they have been warned.
Although the bullfrogs seem to be extremely camera shy, there's no doubt that they are there. They're right over there, growing by the minute and the hour, just waiting to take over. Bob Gillingham, CBC News at Beaver Lake.
Universities and colleges across the country are dealing with the growing use of artificial intelligence. It's showing up in more and more learning situations, not just student essays. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson takes a look at the way AI is changing how some educators teach.
At this lab, students are using artificial intelligence to make their ideas into reality, like a robot to help with search and rescue missions, and AI algorithms that can help detect forest fires before they spread.
You can, for example, from cameras, detect when the fire starts, because when you detect it early, you can fight efficiently against the forest fire.
But computer science and engineering classes are not the only places you'll see AI used for educational purposes.
It's a creative tool to support the overall creative process.
At the University of British Columbia, they're using ChatGPT, a tool that takes prompts and generates a text response to start the creative process in making art and film. It comes up with a skeleton script, which is then tweaked by aspiring writers and actors. Then AI can again help turn actors' movements into motion capture or animation.
It will never give you something you'll be 100% satisfied with. And that's where the human comes into the equation. We are there to prompt, to see what it can help us to generate, to throw that away, to start over.
You know, the conversation would then be...
What these professors told us is AI is here to stay. It's futile to fight it.
It's going to change the way society as a whole operates, and universities are no exception.
But teaching students how to use it ethically is a huge part of the job.
We need to educate our society, our students, our professors, that there are ways which are legitimate ways to use this technology, and there are ways they should avoid using the technology.
They want their students to be aware of biases and prejudiced views that ChatGPT can at times spew out. They also acknowledge that the very use of AI on campus is still a deeply divisive topic. Some faculty members feel it takes the place of critical thought, research, and creativity that students ought to get at university. Deanna Sumanek-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
It was a big day for women's hockey, with the brand new Professional Women's Hockey League set to start its first season in January. Today was the inaugural draft. CBC's Greg Ross was there.
This is an incredible moment.
Tennis legend and advocate for women's sports Billie Jean King had the honor of announcing the first overall pick in the PWHL draft.
With the first overall pick in the inaugural Professional Women's Hockey League draft, Minnesota selects Taylor Heisey.
American-born Taylor Heisey is selected by her hometown team. She says the last few days have been a whirlwind, but she's doing her best to savor the moment.
I try to take in every moment. I wrote down what I did, the days I did it, just to make sure that I remember this for the rest of my life. It's obviously an inaugural thing. It's a history.
Toronto picked second, and they took a familiar face in Canadian women's hockey, Jocelyn Larocque, who has been playing hockey in the GTA for the past decade.
It's everything that I was hoping for. I would have been happy with any team, but this is the team that I was hoping to get picked by.
Hi, how are you?
The Professional Women's Hockey League is made up of 6 teams. In addition to Toronto and Minnesota, there are franchises in Montreal, Ottawa, New York, and Boston.
It's a day that's going to inspire so many more people to get involved, so many young girls.
Former women's hockey player Jana Hefford is the Senior Vice President of Hockey Operations for the PWHL. She's been a part of other attempts to create professional women's hockey leagues, like the now defunct Canadian Women's Hockey League.
This is different because we have an ownership group that comes with the capital, the resources, the experience to run a professional league. We have the best players in the world. We've never seen more demand for women's sport around the world.
Canadian hockey star Sarah Nurse signed as a free agent with the Toronto franchise. She says having an official draft is also new to women's hockey.
Previously, how women's hockey would work was you basically played where you lived. You played where you worked, you played where it was convenient for you.
The puck will drop on the first PWHL games in January. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Coming up, a Quesnel photographer is used to seeing black bears in her city, but on Saturday, a grizzly showed up. She decided to capture the rare moment. We'll show you after the break.
It's no secret 2023 has been a tough year for Nova Scotia farmers, with one extreme weather event after another. So I wasn't surprised when one local farmer announced she was making the tough call to scale back her operations. It got me wondering, are the farmers who make our food making a living? Let's start by talking to that farmer I mentioned. Hi, Pig Pig.
I hope that we are just able to get through this. I don't know what this is. This year, every farmer I talk to, big, small, commercial, organic, family farm, it doesn't matter. Everyone's just sort of going like, I don't know what's going on.
Amy Hill's pig herd is now a fraction of its former size. She's selling off all but a few of the pasture-raised hogs.
Next year's going to be a lot smaller. I'm not going to be doing hogs anywhere near the size that we have done them before. And I still plan on planting quite a few beds. I hope to fill my greenhouses, but I mean, we'll see what the weather brings.
Hill's husband had to start working full-time off the farm last fall as the business started costing more than it was bringing in. The Hills are not alone.
What they've experienced, I would say, is in line with what the industry as a whole is probably experiencing across Nova Scotia over the last couple of years.
Nova Scotia farms have been losing money for at least the last 5 years, with net farm income in the red. At last count, almost half of Nova Scotia farmers had another job to make ends meet. and more farmers are simply throwing in the towel.
There's obviously different models out there, some with a little more margin in them than others, but in general terms, it's a fairly low margin business to enter into, which means when we have situations like this past year and the past number of years with rising costs, and then this year with significant weather impacts, those profit margins can very quickly slip away.
So how do you keep that from happening? Aside from a bit of good luck with the weather, farmers are looking for government help. Some say two core programs, agri-stability and crop insurance, need major overhauls.
I would say just because they don't work for all doesn't mean they don't work for some. They do work. They are a targeted support. But there are challenges with them, and that's why I've asked my department to review those programs and see how we can make them work better for our producers in this province.
I would still do it on a level for us, but we would just stop selling to other people if next year is catastrophic as well. We can't continue to pour money into something if it can't give back.
Some farmers are making profits, but more are like Hill, growing our food for free or at a loss. It's obviously not sustainable, and those in the industry say if local food production is lost, it's not likely to come back. Taryn Grant, CBC News, Halifax.
Quesnel residents could not believe their eyes on Saturday when a grizzly bear was spotted just minutes from city centre. Black bears are a common sight in the town this time of year, but grizzlies are rare. One local photographer decided to whip out her camera and capture the moment. Take a look.
I saw on Facebook that there was a grizzly in our neighborhood, but I didn't know if it was real or fake news. So I was just kind of pondering this. Ran back in the house and grabbed my camera and drove, not walked, to see if we could see the grizzly, and we saw it in someone's yard. A bit of shock at first, like, yeah, it's really here. And it was actually quite unsettling because, like, we're so used to seeing all these black bears everywhere. They just almost become comical, just how many there are. But the grizzly had a very different vibe. Like, it actually felt quite scary to see it. And it was more skittish. Like, you could tell it wasn't used to, like, being in town like the black bears are. I was right in the front yard of someone's house and kept walking around the tree, climbing up, like standing up, reaching down. And I posted the photos, and I feel like once people saw those photos, like the traffic in Johnson South was heavy all day. Like people were coming to see if they could get a look at it. There was hundreds of likes and lots of comments, and it created a lot of excitement around the bear for sure.
Exciting, but also a bit terrifying seeing a grizzly in the midst. Darius, have you ever seen a grizzly before?
I have only a baby, which means the mom probably wasn't very far behind.
That's
so
even
we
scarier.
got moving, yeah, out on a hike. So that was nice. Not in the middle of a city, though. That probably wouldn't be great.
No, I've only come across black bears, so I can't imagine seeing a grizzly. All right, how are we looking on the weather front?
Pretty good. Lots of rain coming for the interior, and we can use it because of the fire situation we have right now. We have lots of active fires across the province. We saw a lot of those pick up over the weekend because we had some really gusty winds that just really elevated the fire activity that we've been seeing across the province. So given that, seeing all this rain make its way down the province is pretty good news. For a lot of places, it'll be a fairly significant rainfall, but for others, like places in the southern interior, like the Okanagan and Kamloops, the Thompson, it's a chance of rain and a chance it could be a significant rain, but no guarantees. Other places, like through central BC, much higher chance. The coast, once again, guaranteed to get all that rain. So in terms of temperatures, they are staying low. So even as we do dry up across the province, as we leave Tuesday and get into Wednesday and Thursday, things dry up, but they do also stay low in terms of temperatures. So temperatures today were quite low. They stay low tomorrow. They stay low on Wednesday, and they stay low on Thursday. They come up a little bit, especially in the north. So Fort St. John getting a little bit warmer, but for the most part, we're talking temperatures staying in the 20s. For the next couple days, we're staying in the high teens and then coming back up to the 20s as we get into Thursday and Friday. So temperatures and low winds and all that rain could mean some good news for the fire situation, but we'll still have a pretty smoky day tomorrow in some places. Victoria seeing some smoke because of some fires down in Washington, and then as you'd expect, places like central BC and even places around the Thompson and Fraser Canyon, also looking pretty smoky. But our conditions tonight getting low. We have our very low lows getting towards those seasonal fall, close to single digits or in single digits temperatures. And then tomorrow, as we get into the day part, we see temperatures that are, again, just below seasonal for the most part because of all those clouds and rain rolling through. But if we look at our forecast for Vancouver, we see that 1 day of rain in the forecast before we clear up for a few days, and then that chance of rain doesn't return until Saturday. But temperatures inland, again, by midweek, coming back up. So really just a chance of afternoon showers looking at tomorrow before we clear up once again.
Okay, a pretty decent September forecast. Okay, thanks, Darius.
Thanks, Leanne.
Coming up, meet the Vancouver Island man who won the right to harvest and eat frogs, and why some people are applauding the move. That's after the break.
So back to this 200 metres for the second time of asking then. Lanes 1 and 2 both empty. Don't see that too often. Lane 3 on the inside it is Alexandra Gando. Van Boele goes in 4, Brown in 5, De Grasse goes in 6, Knighton 7, Benarek in 8, Curry King in 9. A chance this may be for Knighton to shine in the absence of Noah Lyles. He goes in 7, just 19 years old.
Set.
Away they go. Low running from Brown in 5. Nobody really showing at the moment. It's tight. Benarek moving well on the outside. Benarek, big powerful man, holds the lead at the moment. Knighton trying to come back and then gradually clawing it back. But so is De Grasse. De Grasse moving clear. The Olympic champion is back. His first big win of the year. And that is special from De Grasse. 19.75. Where has he pulled that one out from? At last, Andre De Grasse of Canada is finding his best form. He was only 6th in Budapest. He's been a serial medalist over the last few years. Fabulous medals going back to Beijing 2015 even. He was a silver medalist and a bronze medalist in Rio 2016. He was silver medalist in 2019.
That for De Grasse is a sensational run. You could see it was like the old De Grasse. When they got to about 60 to go, it's almost like he has another gear. And he started to move through. And I mean, he's been getting better as the season goes on. That run in Brussels maybe should have been a bit of a sight, warning, if you like, to the others. But this is just another step on. Look how he just continues to go away as the others fade. Knighton never really got out, did he, at all? Benarek ran the better bend, but De Grasse was already looking for the clock 10 metres out. And that, even as good as he's been, Tim, that's his 4th best ever.
Well, it's by far his best this season, Steve, isn't it? I mean, he hasn't come close to that sort of running earlier on this year. And 1976, yeah, much needed that for the confidence of Andre De Grasse, the Olympic champion, going into Olympic year. Perfect timing.
Well, we've had some predictable and some startling performances from the big stars, but De Grasse there showing that he's still to be reckoned with, still to be contended with if he's fit and healthy. He has had his injury problems, but wow.
Well, all credit to his coach, John Coughlin. Also coaches Camacho Quinn and Near Ali. And that is a really, really wonderful way to end the season for his squad.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell. Here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. With the changes to how Canada is able to access journalism online and on social media, we want to assure you that when you're looking for CBC News, you'll always be able to find us. Wherever you are in BC, local news, breaking stories, and the latest from around the world is at your fingertips any time of the day with the free CBC News app and online at cbcnews.ca. Download the CBC News app and stay connected wherever you are.
A Vancouver Island man has been given the go-ahead to harvest and eat American bullfrogs from a municipal lake.
No, I've not tasted them, but I hear that they taste just like chicken.
The large invasive amphibians caught the attention of Michael Inge, who usually fishes at Chemainus Lake. He says they have taken over the lake and outnumber the native frog population. Inge wrote a letter to North Cowichan's District Council asking for permission to harvest the bullfrogs after hours at dusk when they're most easily caught. The council unanimously approved the request at a recent meeting, and the move was welcomed by those who frequent the lake.
People do eat frog legs in other places of the world. Insects are like 99% protein. Like, there's a lot of food out there that we won't eat because of our cultural ideas.
Inge says the decision by the North Cowichan District Council is a win not just for himself, but for the environment as well. Nothing tastes bad with butter. So butter and maybe a little black bean sauce, I think that'll fix it right up. All right, that's it for us tonight. Thank you for joining us on CBC News at 6. A reminder to check us out on the CBC Gem app. Dan Burt will be here at 11 o'clock right after the National. Have a good night.